before we get into all that, how did you get into this line of work? How did you get into addictions in the first place?
Well, I got into the line of work by experimenting myself first. I'll call that my field study portion of studying addiction. Started drinking when I was 14, smoking weed at 16, started into harder drugs at like 18. And by the time I was 20, 21, I was pretty heavily addicted to meth. And when I say pretty heavily addicted, I was just smoking meth all day, every day. So that started in college and kept going. I rode that train for about 5 years, and that ended in a SWAT team arrest. I was selling at that point. I had guns. I was selling a lot of other drugs. It was a pretty crazy scenario by the end. And at that point, nobody thought I was going to be studying it or talking to other people about it. I was just trying to get my life together. And what ended up happening is that through my efforts at getting my life together, I couldn't get hired to get a job because now I've been to jail. So I went back to school, and in school I found this passion. I mean, I didn't know I was going to study addiction, but I found this passion for working with people who had struggled the way that I had before, understanding and learning why, the neuroscience, the psychology, all the nuance of why people become addicted, why they have a problem, actually why I got addicted, and then that translated to other people. And then I started working with some people in research. Like, we're doing addiction research with people who had been addicted, homeless people down here in Long Beach. And I just loved it. I really, really loved it. I'd never been that motivated and worked that hard for anything in my life, probably. And once I found it, and that was 2004, I've just been running with it since, man.
When did things hit rock bottom for you? Did they? Is that why you changed, or were you one of those people that were able to figure it out before shit got really bad?
No, it got pretty bad. I mean, I had that SWAT team arrest, and it was like my fourth. Right. It was my fourth arrest, but the other ones were small. Like, look, rock bottoms are a funny concept, right? Because you can make anything your rock bottom. It's like the moment you figure it out, I can fuck up and tell the truth about it, and it feels better than fucking up and lying about it. And I've been living in such a web of lies for so much of my life that just the realization that, when I screw up, if I own up to it, then I have a responsibility to change it. And there are things that I need to do to move past this, right? Like, I was still kicked out of rehab. I was still on trial for, something that could leave me in prison for 15, 16, 17 years. Like, all those realities were still there. But they were there whether I was lying about it or telling the truth about it. The thing that made the difference is this full-on taking of responsibility for my own role in how fucked up my life had gotten, and saying, okay, I'm just going to commit to doing whatever I need to do to not fuck it up that badly anymore.
Wow, brother. So, okay, let's dive into recovery and all of that. So, yeah. I really love what you're up to and how it's different. So first, I just want to ask the question. So why is the traditional recovery dead? Why is the traditional recovery model dead? And why do we need to look at different things? And how do we look at different things?
Yeah. So I'll just use a different word than dead. It's just outdated and needs to be updated. It needs an overhaul, right? And look, the first reason is simple. It's been around for about 80 to 90 years, right around the same time the ballpoint pen was invented. And I would argue that it's even based on principles from about 50 to 100 years before that, which is when the telegraph was invented. And I'm using those historical points to make my point clear, and that is, nobody here listening right now uses a telegraph, and it led to amazing advances like the phone, and later on, the internet and Wi-Fi and all this wonderful stuff. Great. But we don't use it anymore. And the ballpoint pen is nice, but there's nothing innovative about it nowadays. And I think we need to completely rethink our current system. And the reason I say that emphatically is it's failing the people that it needs to help. Somebody was just really mad at me today on Instagram because we have an ad that runs for my book. And it calls into question, it doesn't call into question, it calls bullshit on the once an addict, always an addict mentality. I think that is one of the most damaging bullshit things you can tell somebody who struggles with addiction. It's first of all, if anybody's listening and needs to hear this, it's bullshit. It's not true. You need to get rid of that notion right away. And by the way, while you're at it, get rid of that whole addict label, period. Don't call somebody an addict in the same way you don't call somebody who had cancer a cancer patient. Like, you don't look at them and go, you're a cancer patient for the rest of your life. That's upsetting. That's sad. Like, you don't look at somebody who has diabetes and every day you're like, oh, you're a diabetic. You got to get up in front of everybody and tell them you're a diabetic. No, fuck you. So once an addict, always an addict is bullshit, and we need to get rid of that. And the other piece that a lot of people have more of a hard time is the powerlessness concept. We're not powerless. We may not be all powerful. We're not gods, but there's a big gray area between I have all the power in the universe and I control anything I want, and I'm completely powerless. And what we need to get people to understand is they're not powerless. They're actually incredibly empowered. And one of the things they're empowered about is they get to make choices about how they want to get better. So those are two big pieces. And then the next one, I have a book about this one called The Abstinence Myth. We need to update the idea that anybody who struggles with any addiction must commit to quitting, or they're not serious about, or will not get better. First of all, I'm not sober. For anybody listening right now, I'm a social drinker. My wife and I have also talked about, we do MDMA a handful of times a year. I've done mushrooms here and there. That's kind of the extent of my drug use, but I'm not sober. I haven't been sober in 15 years. I was heavily addicted to meth. So you can't tell me the bullshit about like, well, maybe you were never an addict. That's great, but nobody would have said that back then when I was heavily addicted to meth. And so you can have a really serious drug or alcohol problem, find ways to fix it, and then live a very normal life later. And we have to get people to understand that, because we're losing more and more people every year. There's somewhere between 30 and 60, 70 million people who struggle with alcohol and drugs in this country every single year. And more of them are dying. And part of the reason is not just the drugs and the alcohol, it's the crappy system we've set up to help them.